Hi, I'm Hope Decker. I'm the director of the Whalen Free Library in Whalen, New York, and I'm also a researcher on the Rural Library Services and Social Wellbeing project that was funded by the IMLS. A panel of 6 rural librarians from across the country and I are going to talk about ways that the research has helped them improve their library service to their communities and the ways that rural libraries uniquely affect the good life in their communities. This research asked the question, do rural libraries impact the social well-being of their communities? And if so, how? Some of the important things that we found out from our research were that people who live in rural communities value the social connection and being close to nature more than being close to stores or even medical care. Rural residents connect to each other and to resources through their library. And the last one that's kind of wonderful is that the directors of rural libraries really bond to their community, and their community feels like their director is their own. If you go to the research website, rurallibraries.org, you'll find tons of resources there. An overview of the project that's more in-depth, some papers, policy briefs, interviews, quotes, tons of data, a little bit of background about the people, a write-up of each case study community that we visited. But today we're going to focus on the toolkits. These are resources created by rural librarians for rural librarians. We have this set of about 20 tools that were developed by the 3 researchers and the case study community librarians. These tools are meant to be used by rural librarians, and they're kind of self-reflective, usually questions, but sometimes a checklist. We asked librarians from across the country to work with us in a 5-week guided mentorship program that went through the tools, not every single tool, but a handful of tools, go through it slowly, thoughtfully, with intention, and apply what they were learning and discovering to their current library work. So today we're going to talk a little bit, we're going to talk to some librarians from these communities. These 6 rural librarians from across the country are our panelists today. They sat down with me via Zoom and chatted about their experience in the Tools in Action program.
Our service population is 4,900, although around 300 of that is our local prison, of which we technically do not serve them. They have their own library and librarian. We're centered in around northwestern Illinois. And we just are a community, just 3rd, 4th, 5th generation have grown up here. It's nothing to have kids come in with children of their own that I remember when they were in kindergarten, 1st grade, and they had such a wonderful experience. They are just thrilled to be able to introduce their kids. So that's really very heartwarming. We don't have much business. We're pretty small. We have 1 cafe, a BP Subway, a grocery store, couple of taverns, and that's pretty much it.
Right. Hi, I'm Heidi Eckerson, and during this project, I was actually working at the Newfield Public Library in Newfield, New York, which is in upstate New York, about 10 minutes from Ithaca, which some of you may know from Cornell University and Ithaca College. But Newfield, where I was based, is more of a bedroom community. So we serve about 5,000 folks in our community, and it has this beautiful rural nature. So that's where I was during the time of this project.
And where are you now?
So shortly after the project wrapped up, I became the member services librarian at the Finger Lakes Library System, which Newfield is a part of that system. But now I get to serve 33 rural libraries in the beautiful Finger Lakes region of upstate New York. So this project is something I'm hoping to share with those 33 member libraries because there was such value in this project.
I'm the library director here at the Greensboro Free Library in Greensboro, Vermont. We're a population of right about 1,000 between our little village and Stannard, which is a neighboring village, which we service their library as well. But in the summer, the population swells because we're right on Caspian Lake, which is a big summer vacation, second home spot for the area. So in the summer, we'll serve 1,500 patrons a month, even though there are only 1,000 people in the area. We also have, the library's really evolved thanks to the generosity of a lot of the second home owners as one that is derives a lot of its funding from donations instead of the town. So we only get 1/4 of our funding from the town. So we rely on donors a lot. We also rely on volunteers. I had 25 volunteers this summer I was working with coming in, and so our circulation desk for all of our hours is covered by a volunteer at some point. We couldn't do that during COVID, but we're getting back to that. So as the director, a lot of what I do here is teaching volunteers to do things and getting them to help me.
All right, my name is Megan Honey. I am the library director here at Lions Falls Library in Lions Falls, New York. We're a very small town in the middle of lots of farmland and outdoor nature activities. We have probably just under 600 people here, and the library is in a historic carriage house. It belonged to one of the historic mansions in the village. We have lots of history here. We have an old carriage, an old cannon, all sorts of photos of the town throughout the ages. And
In the library, I might add, a cannon
Yes.
and a carriage in the library.
It's a challenge to keep the little ones from climbing on the carriage. They like to pretend there's horses that they can ride with. But it looks like a small castle. It feels like a small castle some days, but we have a great community room that we can use for gathering and a nice backyard here. It's a nice little building.
So our library is located in Central North Carolina. We're in Liberty, North Carolina, which is kind of smack dab in the middle of the state. We're between Greensboro and Chapel Hill, which is what I usually say if people know about two big cities. We have about 2,600 people in Liberty, between 2,600 and 2,700. So we are considered a rural area. It's kind of strange to think about where we're located as rural, purely because we're only 20 minutes from several very large cities and we're only about an hour from Raleigh. But once you drive down here, it really is kind of not out in the middle of nowhere, but yeah, it is rather rural. And because we are rural, a lot of our community members don't have access to a lot of different things. We're not necessarily like a food desert, but we certainly have a lot of resources and we have a lot of food insecurity in the community. I am the branch manager at Liberty and am coming up on my 1 year as branch manager. So not the position I ever imagined myself being in, but I think the toolkit and the experience with the grant with you all really gave me the chance to realize that everything that I've done in my life, though, has really kind of brought me to this. And I think it actually is a good fit and has really given me the opportunity to step back and think about that maybe this is a good position for me. I was really struggling when we first started doing the tools because I was like, I can't do this job. This is not for me. Like I can't lead a library. But I think it really has just in the last 6 months or so come together a lot better, and we're getting really good responses from the community. So it makes me feel a little more confident about being able to lead the library and moving into the future with that.
I work at the Livonia Public Library in Livonia, New York, which is just south of Rochester, New York, in upstate, western part of the state. It's a very small rural library. The village of Livonia, the population is only a little over 1,000, and in the whole town, it's around 7,000 people. My library, the building itself is very old, but in 2017, there was a huge improvement project, and now we have a beautiful, very large building that was, the architecture of the building was the same person who did several of the really, really nice libraries up in the city of Rochester. So we're very, very lucky to have this beautiful space. I am the youth services coordinator. I also do most of the programming coordination at this library, and I've been here for 2.5 years, and it's the best job ever.
And you do it very well, by the way. So my first question for you is, when we went into communities across the country to do our interviews, we asked each person to describe the community that they would like to live in. And although this doesn't specifically address libraries and library work, it was a great general question to start off with. And it kind of was like the magic question that allowed people to just share what was really important to people. When we talk about social well-being or community well-being, we usually think about physical or mental health, and it's a little broader than that. Each community is unique. It has its own history, and the people are different. The location is different. So the good life is going to be a little different to each person, to each community. And so the good life is belonging, it's safety, it's feeling like you belong to the place where you live, that you like where you live, you have a sense of, this is my good life, and I'm glad I'm here. What does the good life mean to you?
I would say my sense of well-being comes from knowing I belong to a community of people who genuinely care for each other, genuinely care, really truly want the best for each other, knowing that at any given time, there's any number of people I can call on, and without question, they will be there to do whatever they could to help, whether it's me personally or this library. They will step up anytime, day or night, and knowing that, that's got to me, that's the best sense of well-being. Our health, yes, we all want good health, but even when, you know, we may not be feeling well, knowing that if one of my patrons or my neighbors know that maybe I'm down and, you know, ill, without question, they're going to have meals at my door, bringing me chicken soup. I mean, you know, do you need something? Can I go to the grocery store for you? Let me cut the grass for you. Those kind of things. You can't put a price on those things. You can't buy that kind of well-being. So it comes from It comes from genuine people caring genuinely for each other. So that's my sense of well-being.
Yeah.
And it overflows into my work here.
But for me, the good life is feeling safe, happy, and, having nature around me, having a good book, and feeling like I belong. So it was really everything I was experiencing in my life at that time. I just had to put it into words.
So to me, the good life is a peaceful existence where curiosity and the desire for new perspectives and knowledge are encouraged. Not only encouraged, but hopefully easy to find as well. Part of my love of library work is being able to help people find free and easy to access resources that encourage their love of learning and help them feed their curiosity.
I think one of the big components of it was really just thinking about social and emotional well-being as an entity of like a library or a municipal resource, but then also how we as librarians can make ourselves vulnerable to our community. We had never really opened ourselves up to the community and accepting our own history, that we haven't always been welcoming to everybody in the community. And so thinking about the social and emotional well-being, not only of our community, but then also how the library could help address that, I think really opened us up for the opportunity to be more vulnerable, to address the issues we've had in the past. So not only, maybe not being necessarily fairly welcome to everybody, like people of color or even different language speakers, but also accessibility. I've really pushed to have a wheelchair ramp and getting ADA bathrooms built. And if anything, those things have also given us a chance to talk to the community about accessibility. And so our own openness and being willing to talk about all different things, and just, what do you want to see our library be, and why don't you come to our library, has been really rewarding. And I think it also gave us the chance to not just think about on paper how we can make things better, that we really wanted to open ourselves up to people opening up to us.
I think I would describe the good life as being most of the people in a community, most days, waking up and feeling excited about their life. Not every day, obviously, but I think that is the goal when we talk about community well-being and living a good life. Waking up feeling like you have a purpose for being here, that people rely on you and you can rely on people, and that there's more to look forward to than to dread, I guess, in life.
Not everybody has a favorite tool, and some people have more than one tool that's a favorite. But what was your favorite tool?
It was the pathways of belonging, seen and unseen. The questions that they suggested asking, that was the tool I used for going out and talking to my community members. I never would have. We've done surveys before, but it was always, what do you want the library to do? What programs do you want the library to have? What are we not doing? This was much more broad, and not only is it going to help myself and my board as we do a strategic plan, but I'm reaching out, and I know it's going to help my village trustees as they plan working forward, how to help the village of Sheridan grow. The churches, what's out there in the community that we don't know their needs, but by asking those questions that came in that tool, such as, what would your ideal community look like? I never would have thought to ask that broader of a question. it just gave me, that was my aha moment. That was absolutely my aha moment. And I use that all the time now. It's even in my own personal, interactions with people. I tend to go back to those questions to get to know more, get to know more about them on a real basis.
It was sort of hard to choose, but I think the first tool I engaged with would still end up being my favorite. And that was, do people feel like they belong in your library? Because I know I personally have not always felt like I've belonged in some places. And it's probably a pretty human feeling. And in a library, I feel like that's something we strive for. So that became a really interesting tool because it got me to think about things, not just what was in my collection that might make people feel like they belong. Did they see themselves reflected in my collection? But did they feel comfortable coming into the library? So accessibility issues, signage concerns, lighting concerns, even, we're such a small town, everybody knows everybody. So there were times we didn't always use library cards because we knew who folks were. So I think that sense of belonging, because in Newfield, the library truly is a community center. It's a community hub. So that was a very powerful tool for me.
So my favorite tool was probably nature, going beyond the walls of the library. I find that here in my community, we have so much nature and it's beautiful. But because most people were born here and lived here and grew up here, the nature almost becomes, it's just commonplace and you forget to notice that it's there. I have found that the quiet space that people are looking for in the library is very similar to the quiet space that you can find in the great outdoors. And it's always available if you know where to look. So creating opportunities that can get library patrons to realize the beauty and the wonder of what's around them already that's really important to me.
When I first started with the toolkits, I really connected with engaging with community and well-being, mostly because the idea of realizing needs in our community, but not necessarily like knowing how to talk to people about that. And so like what I appreciate through all the tools is it gives you not just kind of pathways to lead your community, but also vocabulary and methodology. So it's not just a words on paper. It is kind of like walking through with somebody, even if you're just doing the online version. And so I like that personal connection to it. So I appreciated that tool certainly initially, but also just looking at like, is everyone welcome at the library? That was something that I know initially I was like, yeah, we know we have problems with that. And our community conversations through the ALA was intended to speak with people in parts of the community that had been perhaps neglected or pushed away in the past. And then combining that with doing kind of an artwork project as a part of the toolkit grant really gave us the chance to really engage with our community. It was so much fun. And we learned that our community likes painting, which was thoroughly entertaining. And so, I intend on continuing to do community artwork projects because of that benefit of seeing, like you had said at one point, when you have busy hands, your heart is open. And that was really the experience that we saw, that we did bring people together to engage with one another and have these conversations, but we engaged over artwork. And, so while people were painting, we were just casually talking to them about, what would you like to see as a part of this community? Or, what's your experience being in this community? And we have learned a lot.
Yeah. I've been thinking about it a lot. my favorite tools, because as I was going through this mentorship program, every single week when I did a new tool, I was like, this is it. This is my favorite tool that kept happening. So I think I'm going to say two of them instead of just one, if that's all right. I think for myself personally, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this, the burnout tool came at a very critical time in my library career. And I really felt like it made a huge difference in my life and my work. For my community and for the people that come to my library or live in this town, I would say that my favorite tool is probably Is Everyone Welcome at Your Library? It just really aligns very perfectly with my own values and what I really believe every library should be, which is a welcome space for anybody who wants to use it.
Did you have any insights from the Is Everyone Welcome at Your Library?
Yeah, absolutely. So this tool really encouraged me to take a deeper dive into the demographics of Livonia, and just very like evidence-based information about the town that I hadn't really done, which I'm pretty embarrassed to say. And so I was sort of operating under the assumption that this library was mostly, or this community was made up of mostly middle-aged, older folks. And looking at the census data, which I did because of this tool, I learned that, and I remember telling you, I learned that this community is made up of actually mostly very young people and young families and everything. And so that was really, really helpful because it, for one thing, sort of validated what I do here with the youth and the young families and everything. And then beyond that, it also really helped to see like who has the most say in what happens in the library and who is speaking the loudest, and how maybe that's a little bit mismatched from the actual makeup of the population in the town. So there was a lot of helpful stuff there. That was a big insight I got. And I think part of the reason why I talk about how wonderful these tools are to everyone is that, just something as simple as reading the instructions to just go on to the census website and just get the specifics about your town. It's such a simple thing, but I found it to be very valuable. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The tools encourage us to take a step back. The questions that are asked encourage people to be a little more reflective, more self-reflective about what they're doing and why they do it. And I'm curious, did you have any aha moments?
Well, besides having a booth up at a couple of community events, and I gave out little $5 Subway gift cards for $5 to this local restaurant that we have. And it's just a little it's called Calico Cafe, maybe can seat all of maybe 30 people. So it's not large. And it's, in fact, our new board member, her husband owns this cafe. Now, I did this before she became our board member, but, I mean, everybody knows everybody there, and that's the place to go. So I've gone there and I sat down and I said to people, if you can sit down and give me a couple minutes of your time, I just got some really easy questions. They're not real personal, they're broad, and I'll buy you a cup of coffee and, slice of pie of the day here, and oh yeah, yeah, they'll sit down for a cup of coffee and a piece of pie. I think they enjoyed somebody really wanting to know what their thoughts were. And it wasn't politics, it wasn't COVID, it wasn't, all the nonsense going on. It was you really want to know what I'd like to see in my community? Somebody's actually asking me that question. They care about my input. I think they really enjoyed being asked that question. Like, wow, somebody really wants to know. Especially now, I think a lot of people feel like there's nothing in their control anymore. Like all Everything about their life has been taken out of their hands. So to have somebody ask and really genuinely want to know, and maybe actually take that information and create something from it, it's like, wow, this is refreshing.
Well, it was so interesting because I think when I sort of filled out the preliminary survey or application, if you want to call it that, I think I had this very narrow focus of what I was hoping to achieve. And that was to make people feel like they belonged in my library. And then at some point, I feel like I matured and I realized not everybody's going to come to the library, and that is okay. You're not going to serve every person's need. And that was okay. That was totally okay. It's definitely important to reflect and make sure that you are not creating a barrier or creating a reason why someone might not come, but to realize that there are other places that folks may go to have their information and recreational needs served, and to not feel hurt about that.
Did you have any aha moments? I don't recall which tool. It might have been the library as a welcoming center. And that was a really nice list to just look at the library. Does your library have this? Does it do this? And I could just check yes, no. That's one that made me say, we need to reinstate name tags. I'm wearing mine today. And so, especially as we were bringing back many more volunteers for the summer than we'd had before. So we had name tags made for everybody. And as part of the training, I asked them to wear the name tags so people don't come in and know who is working here and who is not. But that was just on one of the tools. I'm like, oh yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
So one big aha moment for me was, and I may be getting the name of this tool wrong, I'm realizing in my notes here, using the community as a welcome center tool, library as a welcome center, that's what it is. Before using the library as a welcome center tool, my mindset here was, we're a location, we have books, we have movies, we have some other resources, but that's what we do. Afterwards, I realized that the library is our only place in town that is free to everybody, has great internet, and consistent hours. A lot of people will come in just to use our copy machines or our fax machines or check their email, not just check out books. And using that Welcome Center tool kind of shifted from being just a library to, we're the only place in town that is a resource center for the community. This is where people go when they have a question, when they need help with something, if their printer's broken, they end up here. And that's really kind of changed the way I do things.
Okay, so the one example I guess I will give for an aha moment, which you had a huge part in helping me with, was the idea that I am not just here to like work and work and work and give and just, that's it. I just give to the community and they take, and that's my job. That community engagement and the community giving back, us working with each other instead of me working for the people, was huge. Because, I think in public service, it's like, you don't want to ask too much of people. You don't want to be like a burden, but it really gives people's life meaning if they are also contributing. So nowadays, that was huge. Another very simple thing, but felt very big to me. So nowadays, when people are offering to help, or offering donations or offering their talents in certain ways, my instinct used to be that just, no, don't worry about it. I'm here to serve you. You just sit back and relax. Now I find that I am saying, yes, tell me, what can you offer us here? And I would love for us to work together. How can we make this happen together? And I really think, even just on a small scale, day to day, I see the effects and how much that means to people. So
How else did you use the tools?
I think when I think about that, there are like over a dozen tools, and I did not use all of them. But I was really intrigued by the like the pathways of belonging, delight. So there's a theme with me here about belonging, I guess. And I love the word delight. And I remember at first it wasn't quite clear to me what that tool was. So I remember asking you, like, what is this concept of pathways? And you explained it to me. And I thought, that's brilliant, that there's these different ways of reaching folks, and that they may create their own pathways, that you don't always have to lay the stone for folks to follow in. So that's something that, and again, I actually left that library in that position shortly after this, my connection with your grant wrapped up. So I didn't always get a chance to follow up in that specific setting, but it's something I think about. It's like, how can you reach out and create those connections, and maybe have people build their own pathways to the library instead of standing there with the door open saying, hey, come on in, but rather having them find their way there through their own needs or things that they can offer, that folks can offer, that the community can help offer, and make it their library. So I really loved that idea.
You wanted a specific example of a tool that made us look at the library with new eyes, or just think of something differently. And that was the Delight tool, that the idea that as patrons walk through a library, they should be filled with a sense of wonder and delight. And so that really helped me look around, because libraries do get cluttered with plaques or signs that are old, and we sort of, I think, the librarians stopped looking at that because we're here all the time. So I just started thinking about, is this a space that kids will like, that families will like, that seniors will like? And what is it about the space that makes them happy? So part of the money for this grant, I ended up spending on some cute red furniture for kids, and some nice posters and things that just brighten up the spaces. And people really enjoyed them. So I would say that was a tool that really got me thinking differently. And I have to keep remembering that one too. So part of the problem in a library is there's so much stuff you have to tell people, like, where's the printer? Where's the copier? Where's the bathroom? Where's this collection? Where's that collection? That you can end up just being overwhelmed by signs. And so I'm trying to have fewer signs, but make things a little more obvious, so that the printer's right by the computer, for example, things like that. But yeah, we have so much information to share with people that finding ways to tell them without filling their eyes with all these little signs is difficult.
That's a really good point. That's very insightful. And the tone of the signs, sometimes signs can be so mean.
We took down some the behavior standards. I can't remember what the words were, but it was like a children's behavior policy that was posted in the young adult room, as if the teenagers are going to read that and then act appropriately or something. Yeah. But yeah, we took those down. So.
Yeah, I don't think that would motivate teenagers to do what you want them to do. It might serve to do the opposite.
That's right.
We do tea of the month, where we have a tea bag. We put a little Ziploc bag. We do a tea bag in there, and we have a cookie that kind of goes with it. And maybe we have a little poem or a note card you can color. And just those, just come on in and see those things.
I found out about Tea of the Month, which I'm fully intending to copy. Is that okay?
Oh, sure. What we did last month is, what my staff member did is she found a note card thing, and we had dandelion tea, and then there was a picture of flowers on a card, and that went in it with the little, a little color, so you could do a little coloring, how that's supposed to be very relaxing. And then there's a cookie with it. And 1 month, I don't know what tea, like Christmas, we're going to have peppermint tea and a Christmas cookie. And I don't know what they come up with the ideas. So, but yeah, we have a little basket and you can just come in and pick up your little packet of tea of the month and go try. And it's a different flavor tea. We just started that about 3 or 4 months ago.
Talking about the nature tool going beyond the walls of the library, that I do feel like opened up my eyes about how we define like a library space, and really anything can be a library, and a library can be anywhere as long as it's somewhere we're touching somehow. And I do feel like that made me think a lot more about what kind of services we can provide outside of the walls here at the library. And through this tool and discussion with you, I ended up starting to think a lot more, and it's still, this project is sort of still underway, but I've lately been thinking a lot more about how the library can serve hunters in the area, because it's a very popular hobby in this town, obviously. And I hadn't even really ever really thought about them as a population that I would like to expand our services to. And so I'm still working on that, but that was, I mean, so I would say that's one specific way that I'm now thinking differently. It's just through nature, through all of the, through, you know, things that might not initially meet the eye as ways the library can serve the community.
And I've appreciated that people have been really honest with us. And I think it's helped us to be more honest too. And that, you know, I don't have to act like I'm surprised, or because I'm not necessarily surprised by a lot of things. So, but having people being able to share their experiences has been really eye-opening, just even for the history of our community, but also the history of our library. And that's been a really great engaging point too.
When you're talking about the history of your library, what do you mean?
So our library historically has not necessarily been very welcoming, particularly to African-American individuals in our community. And I would say both the Black and Brown population, until we had a Spanish speaker on staff at one point. We really didn't have foot traffic for and representing those populations in our community, but they're fairly high populations in our community. Our Latinx and Hispanic population is over 22%. I haven't gotten the percentages down yet with the recent census, but even our African-American population is upwards of 20%. So, you know, two fairly large contingents that weren't being well served or weren't feeling equally accepted at the library for a number of reasons. So they felt really pushed away. And unfortunately, something we realized through the conversations, through the toolkit, is that it went on for generations. So, you know, there are several generations of people in our community that didn't feel like they could go to the library. And so it's still going to take a lot to reach out to those people and get their children or their grandchildren now to come back to us. But like I said earlier, I think it's, you know, we're making those steps now, and hopefully in the next couple of years, we'll see that change. But it's going to take more time. You know, you can't undo 20 maybe more years of how people felt. But you know, you can build your resources to be more welcoming when they do make it in the door.
This one I'm still using, but the Awakening to Community Potential tool, it talks about, you know, getting to know the folks that are in your library and what do they have to offer and how can they offer that to the library maybe in the future. And being here, I'm only here 20 hours a week, and I have to plan and facilitate my entire vision for the library in that limited amount of time. And I have found that conversation with the people that are already using the library has been the best resource of all ideas for everything. Instant feedback, programming ideas. I have gotten so many wonderful things have come my way just from talking to people, whether it be gardening tips or vegetables or day trip recommendations. We've had a number of donations that happened because of a spontaneous phone call or conversation, whether it be library materials or craft supplies. I've started to develop a lot of my programming around the volunteers that willingly give their time. Whether it's they suggest something or they know somebody that might be interested, that little tie into the community is enough, that there's enough buzz that I actually get people to attend, which
Yeah.
in a small library is always, will people show up? That's always the question. A really, really great example. I was able to acquire some park benches for the outside of the library this summer. I had a conversation with a patron that I was looking for pre-owned park benches that weren't very expensive. And it just happened that they managed to find the right sale at the right time. And they had talked to me. They managed to set up all of the conversation that I needed to with the seller for me. And within maybe a month and a half of mentioning, hey, this is my idea, I wonder if we could make this happen somehow, a patron had helped me solve the problem without, it was very, very easy. Very, very easy. And I have to keep going back to that tool and reminding myself that anybody that comes into the library as a user potentially has something that they're willing to share with our community. It's just a matter of giving them the right avenue and timing to do it. So I try to keep notes in my head, but also on paper of, you know, who mentioned this great author, or who mentioned that they know this local author that might be willing to come in, or who wants to do a certain craft project because they saw it on Pinterest and it looked cool, but they actually have experience that they don't want to talk about. It's a constant give and take of actively listening to the people that are in front of you and hearing what they have to say and what they are looking for in their library. And then also going, okay, where do I see the potentials to create some programs that might appeal to them specifically? There's so much potential in the people that come in, always. And that's an inexhaustible supply of ideas. It's just a matter of listening. And so I'm still trying to train myself to remember to listen and think about the different possibilities that they might be willing to involve themselves in the future.
The two areas that I thought of was because I've been trying to do adult programming, trying to figure out what it is people want. I think these tools made me think about, and it's been difficult with COVID, so I haven't done it much, but really reaching out into the community more to meet with people and talk about what it is they're interested in and what it is they want. And, you know, we've all kind of been stuck to ourselves for so long, and I felt like we were starting to come out again this summer, and now everyone's kind of stuck to themselves again. So it's not the best time, but there was a recommendation that new library directors kind of meet all the people in the community that they can, from the principal to the pastors of the church and all that. And I never got a chance to do that. So that's still at the back of my mind when I'm reflecting about how do I plan programming going forward. I'm like, well, I start with what is, you know, who is in the community and what it is they want. So I have that back of my mind for when I can get to it.
Yeah.
So with the library as a welcome center tool, shifting my mindset, I have tried to make our day-to-day dynamic. I've kind of modeled it after a visitor center. So any type of place you would go to visit on vacation, where you can go up and ask questions and get directions and find out what's happening. And so with that, like I said, we have some museum worthy artifacts already and art on the walls and stuff here. But I have tried to learn more about where the local farmers markets are, where the cemeteries are, what the history is there, where you can go to find waterfalls within 5 minutes of the library. I found that non-locals, when they come through, these are the questions that they ask anyway. And then the locals, they want to share their stories about these places with you. But when they do that, they want you to be familiar with these places as well. So anytime there's a local agency or attraction that offers us free brochures or leaflets or anything like that, I try to say yes and then put them somewhere that they're available in the library. I'm trying to facilitate that environment where patrons can come in knowing that it's okay to ask questions. If they need resources, we will find them for them. We will order them materials. And if they need help on the computer, that's okay. Most of us do. We can offer that. In the same vein of Welcome Center, I also kind of revamped how I did my library card sign up. And now every time somebody signs up, I make sure that they get a thorough explanation of how they can use it to log in online, how they can get ebooks, what libraries it works at, how interlibrary loan works, all of those little things that go along with it that if you're in a library, you know, but if you don't go to a lot of libraries, you might not realize. It's neat. In the tool, I remember that it kind of talks about, setting up your library as a welcome center for new people to the area or folks visiting for the first time. But I've kind of expanded on that to include the residents too, because what I found is welcoming the new people is great, but welcoming the residents that have been here and helping them rediscover all the nice things about their town or the things that they might be interested in and what the library can do for them is a lot. It's very rewarding.
Before I had gotten the grant for the social and emotional well-being and the toolkits, I had gotten a grant for the community conversations and doing the ALA grant. And when I wrote that grant, I had said, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and we're going to have this, as a result, and da 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 da, like as you would write a grant, and expected outcomes. And then, and going into the grant, I was like, I don't know how to accomplish this grant because the training was just like, you need to be, doing all these things with your community. And I was like, I don't know how to do this. But then through the toolkits, it was like, oh, this isn't, I can do this. I can ask people what skills do they have they want to share with the community. I can offer more resources to my community that they're looking for that, might be like at the Chamber of Commerce or at Town Hall, but they're not open all the time, and that's one thing too, like we are the building in town that is open the most. So we should, even if we're duplicating what's offered at other places, we should still have that resource. And really just trying to rethink. I love that idea of rethinking the library as a community center, as a resource, and as a network for people, not just to get books. I keep telling people that if we can get people into the building, we can probably get a book in their hand. But what are people looking for to want to come into the building, and what do they need that might give them the chance to interact with us, and then we can work on the books.
All right. So I do always try to share and talk about the stuff I've learned from working through these tools with my colleagues, my coworkers, my director, with parents, volunteers, all of that stuff here in the library. The big and kind of surprising thing about sharing these tools and talking about them has been when I've talked about them with people outside of the library world altogether. So I sent the tool about sitting with uncertainty, the uncertainty tool, to my mother who works in the mental health field. And even though it's clear that it's something tailored to people who work in small and rural libraries, she gave me the feedback that she got a lot out of it. I've shared stuff from the burnout tool with people outside of the library world. So really, when talking about like sharing and brainstorming and continuing to work through what I've learned, it's really not just limited to the library stuff. Yes, it has made me feel very seen as somebody who works at a small rural library. It is a lot of stuff that's very specific to our cases, but the overarching themes are like just so universal, and I think just universally go towards community well-being in any aspect of the community. And So I think that's a hugely valuable thing, even if it's maybe not what you guys intended when you made that.
You know, you hit on something that I know is maybe heretical to say in this day and age, but I know we do focus a lot on numbers and data and having data inform our decisions, but we cannot forget intuition. We cannot forget that this is a human business, right? Why are we doing it this way? Maybe this needs to shift. Maybe this needs to change, or maybe it doesn't. But kind of having that intentionality behind, asking why did we do this? How did this unfold? And not only asking it of yourself, but participants or other members of your community. And sometimes before you're even at that reflective point, like at the very beginning of embarking on a project, kind of saying like, why am I doing this? What is the goal? Am I doing it just to do it, to have a program? Am I meeting a need? Do I know what my community needs are? And that takes time. And sometimes you don't have a lot of time when you're wearing a lot of hats at a small library. So, but I think the idea in my mind is do fewer things well. And then you can kind of build off that. And I think reflective practice really helps you ground and do that.
No, I just wanted to say how grateful I am that the research happened and was compiled in such a way that the website is available with the tools and all of the different interviews and snippets. I am somebody that, depending on the day, will learn in a different style. And so the days that I can read a full page, I'll go and read a tool. And the days that I just want to watch some videos of people talking, I can do that. And I've listened to a number of the sound bites on the research from different librarians at different libraries across the country. And it's so fascinating to be able to hear the similarities. It doesn't matter where your small community is. All small communities have very similar characteristics. And I'm very grateful that the research is there and presented in such a way that you could realize that and glean something from it and use it.
This is the kind of thing that if you can do it with somebody else and talk through these things, it enhances your experience and your learning. And so I'd like to invite everyone to come to our monthly gatherings where we talk with the tool creators and the tool users and their experiences with them, and just a more reflective, intentional approach to rural library service. So even if you haven't done any of the tools, that's okay. It's really more about being reflective and intentional than doing, a set of tools. So we welcome you to come to our monthly online Zoom meetings, the fourth Friday of the month at 10:30 Eastern Standard Time. You can email me at hopedecker123@gmail.com for the link to the Zoom. And I just want to thank everyone for attending. Feel free to reach out. I'd love to hear from you. Bye.